Now this tutorial is just going to outline the process for what we call the blended layer skin softening technique. Now I would only use this where I really wanted an airbrushed look to the skin, and you'll see why when I do it. This is more appropriate for high fashion retouching. It still allows some skin texture to show through, but it doesn't allow for a very natural retouch. With this one, because I've covered blemish removal using split frequency, I'm going to use the healing brush. You'll see there's a spot healing tool and the healing brush tool. I personally often use the healing brush tool, so I can choose the sample as opposed to Photoshop choosing it. That means I have to option click every time I want to resample from an area. You can also use the spot healing brush if you prefer. Sometimes when you're using a Wacom tablet, it's actually better to use the spot healing brush because you can just press with the pen to make the circle bigger or smaller that you're correcting from. So before I do any kind of healing on here, I really want to, before I do any kind of skin softening on here, I really want to remove all of the blemishes. I would probably take out some of these lines as well around the eyes. Again, you may prefer to combine this technique with the split frequency technique, which does a better job of removing some of these. I'm going to do them in small bits on this side because, as you probably saw the first time I passed over it, I could clearly see the line that I'd drawn in here. I often work into the image, so I don't just do it in one broad stroke and then I'm done. I'll often do several passes over things. I'm always looking to see if there's clone samples, like I've just created one there, and then removing them as I go back into it. So with the techniques that I use, it does require a lot of build-up. It requires a lot of attention to detail. You often can't just do one sweep over there. You definitely have to see what's happening with your image. You often have to choose other areas to clone from when you're doing the cleanup. So the first thing with this is to get all of the skin cleaned up. You don't want to do this technique without doing a lot of cleanup to the skin because it will be cloned over. Okay, so now I've got the skin cleaned up. The next thing I'm going to do is duplicate the layer twice. So to duplicate the layer, you can either drag it onto the new layer icon or Command J will duplicate it. I should really name my layers, but in fact I will name them just for the ease of this tutorial. This is my darken layer, and this top one will be my lighten layer, and that refers to the blending mode. So we'll do a darken layer first. So you're going to apply a Gaussian blur of 40 pixels, a radius of 40 pixels to this. So go ahead and click OK. Now you can probably use less because it's a lower res image. For a high res image, you would definitely want to be using the amounts that I'm giving here. Most of you will be doing retouching to camera raw files, so I want to give you the correct amounts, and it will still work pretty well even though this is very blurred when you see the way that this technique works. So now I'm going to set my blending mode to darken, and it looks kind of strange, but that's okay because it's going to look alright once we're finished with this. So now I'm going to turn on my lighten layer, and this time I'm going to set the Gaussian blur to 60, and I'm going to set the blending mode to lighten, and what you get is obviously an image that you can't see very well. We're now going to select both the lighten and darken layers and merge them. So to select two layers, you hold down the Shift key. I'm already on the lighten layer, so I'm going to select the darken layer as well. Shift does a multiple select, so it allows you to select more than one layer at a time. And you can merge your layers. The quick key is Command E, or you do merge layers from your panel menu. As you can see, she looks very, very blurred right now. So there's two more steps to this. First one is we're going to lower the opacity. As to how much you lower it, it's really going to depend on how much skin softening you want on there and what's appropriate to the image. Bearing in mind that this is a low res image, I'm probably going to go slightly lower with the skin softening. I'm on 23% opacity right now. I'm then going to add a layer mask. I'm going to add a hide all layer mask because I'm going to brush the skin back through. You can use either a hide all or a reveal all. A reveal all is a white layer mask, a hide all is a black one. Whichever one you add is going to depend on what you have to paint back in. So if you add a white layer mask, you're going to have to hide the eyes, the mouth, the hair, all of the background. If you add a black layer mask, you're just going to have to reveal the skin. So to add a hide all layer mask, you option click on the layer mask button. If you add the wrong one, you can always do Command I to invert. So right now this is hiding my skin softening. I can now switch to my brush. Now with layer masks you don't have to paint at 100% opacity. I build up my layers, so some people prefer to paint with a low flow because they don't tend to lift the brush. If you're painting with a Wacom tablet you're more likely to lift the pen up and down. But either painting with a low flow or low opacity will allow you to paint through how much you want to reveal on here. So you can reveal different amounts. So I'm going to paint with it on 40% opacity. And I need to paint with white. And this will allow me to just pull through some of that skin softening. And as you can see at 20%, it's not making a huge difference. It is making a small difference, but I can still keep the skin texture there without having it terribly blurred. I would not paint through on the nostrils, and remember you want to keep the lips really sharp, you want to keep the eyes really sharp. And if you ever want to check your layer mask, just option click on it and you can see where I've painted. If you need to kind of fix up some areas, you can do that. So I want to get in a little bit more around here. At any point I can lower my opacity. So you can see what I mean about I'm not just painting in here on black and white. I'm painting with shades of grey. I don't think at any point have I got it to solid white yet. To come out of your layer mask, just option click again. So now that I've got this on here, if I turn that layer on and off, you can see I have very subtle skin softening on there. I can also adjust this. So I've put it now to 41% opacity, and there she has a much more airbrushed skin look, but the eyes are still clear. So the fact that the pores still show through means that what we don't see is a really blurred skin. So this is why this is a good technique for airbrushing, because when you airbrush you never ever want to blur the pores on the skin or it looks wrong. So with this particular image you can see that that skin softening works pretty well, but if you looked at that you wouldn't look at it and think, oh, skin looks really blurred and over retouched. You can of course overdo it. I see a lot of students with their settings on something like this. That does look too soft. Even if I zoom up on here, I can still see the pores through here, although they're starting to look a little bit blurred. But I would never put this technique on 70%. I probably wouldn't go much above around 45. And you know, even at 40, you can see there's quite a lot of skin softening. Don't forget to do the neck. I left that out of this video because I want to keep it brief so it doesn't make too big a file size. But you should also soften the neck and the arms and any other skin that's in the image, otherwise the face will look artificially retouched.